Welcome back to our C Sharp beginner tutorial. In the previous lesson, I think we looked at subclasses and inheritance. We saw how um, one class can inherit, or a subclass can inherit members of its superclass. In today's lesson, what we're going to look at is we're going to still on subclasses. We're going to look at polymorphism. So let me bring up Notepad. That's a keyword I'd like you to note. So polymorphism. Okay, so as the name implies, polymorphism just means or refers to a class, the ability of a class to have several forms, so not just one form. Okay, that's an object, or yeah, I think ability of, okay, I think it's more proper to say an ability of an object of a class to have several forms. So what I mean by several forms is, usually, when you have a class, say you have, let's assume we have a class called A. Okay, and we have another class called B, and we have another class called C. Okay, so all objects that are of class A are going to usually are going to have properties and members of class A, right? And they're going to behave like they are from class A. So they're going to have the form of class A. Okay, they're going to be like that. Their form, like the object is going to behave as if it's an object of class A, right? Now the same thing, if you have an object, like when you create a class B and you create a new object from class B, that object is going to behave, or it's going to have a form of class B, right? It's going to behave as if it's an object of class B. The same thing with an object of class C, right? Now, polymorphism in object-oriented programming is just implying, is just saying that you could actually have an object, okay? Some let's call it object O. Let's call it O. You can actually have an object O that is going to, at some point in your program, it's going to behave as if it is of class A, and in some point in your program, it's going to behave as if it is of class B, and in another point in your program, it's going to behave as if it is an object of class C. Okay, so it's kind of have different forms depending on how you use it, or depending on how you choose to use it. Okay, so we're going to see how you can create such objects, and we're going to see how such objects can behave or can have different forms. Okay, so let's go back into Visual Studio. So that's what today's lesson is going to be about. It's just going to be about polymorphism. So let's open up Visual Studio. What's this? This is not, is this the previous lesson? Oh yeah, this was our previous lesson where we no, I don't think this is our previous lesson. Let's just close it. Don't save. Let's go back. I want us to open the previous lesson we did, where we created a dragon class and a fire breathing dragon class that extends the dragon. So I think it's this one, the subclasses basics. Okay, so let's open that solution, and Visual Studio loads. Okay, yeah, I think this is it. So these are previous the very in the previous lesson, this was the program we created. So if you remember, we had two classes. We created a dragon class. Okay, the dragon, all dragons could fly. And then we created a fire breathing dragon class, which is a subclass, we say is a subclass of the dragon class. And uh, it kind of all fire-breathing dragons could breathe fire. Okay, and also we said because it was a subclass of the dragon class, the fire-breathing dragon class could also fly. Okay, so the fire-breathing dragon class has by default has two members: the fly method and the breathe fire method. And we actually proved that by creating an object of the fire-breathing dragon class, and we called breathe fire and we called fly, and we saw that both were working. Okay, so in today's lesson, like we discussed earlier, we're going to look at polymorphism. Now, for that, the reason I'm opening this particular project is because usually polymorphism comes with subclasses and sometimes with interfaces. But let's look at the one with subclasses first. Okay, so we have a fire-breathing dragon class, right? And we create an object. Let me just remove this. Okay, let me just remove this for now. So we create this object. Okay, this is actually a variable, dragon1, and we create the object and we store the object inside the dragon1 variable. Okay, so the dragon1 variable at this moment is holding a fire breathing dragon object. Okay, now notice if we say dragon1, so that's just what I deleted. I'm going to type it again. If we say dragon1 dot breathe fire, okay, it's going to work. Okay, let's run that. It's going to run. Okay, so you can see it says fire. So it behaves as if it is a fire breathing dragon. Okay, also remember I said all fire breathing dragons could fly because they are subclasses of the dragon class, isn't it? So if we say dragon1 dot fly, we expect it to fly. Okay, because it's a fire breathing dragon. It has everything that a normal dragon has. So you can see it does fly by saying glide glide glide. Okay, now what we're trying to do is we want to the same object. Okay, that same object that we created, notice it's a fire breathing dragon. However, we're going to do something different here. We're going to store it inside okay, sorry, we're going to create a dragon object. No, we're going to create the same fire breathing dragon object, but the variable we're going to use to store it is a dragon. Okay, we're going to use a dragon type. So notice what I'm doing here. Okay, that's not possible. Type or namespace dragon. Okay, it's because I didn't add the using namespace here. So I'm going to say using what namespace is the dragon? Is the interfaces basics namespace. So interfaces basics and our semicolon. Okay, so it's happy now. So notice what I'm doing now. Notice we're still creating an object of a fire breathing dragon. Okay, we're still creating an object of a fire breathing dragon, but this time notice what we're doing. We're making the variable, that's the variable where we're going to store it, we're making it a type of dragon. Okay, do you see I know some of you might be thinking this should pop up an error, but no, it won't pop up an error. The reason why it won't pop up an error is because you see the fire breathing dragon class possess everything that the dragon class has. So if you want the fire breathing dragon to behave as if it is a dragon, it should be able to. Okay, so when you create a fire breathing dragon and you store it inside a variable declared as a normal dragon type, what happens is that object now takes the form of a normal dragon. Notice what happens if I say dragon1 dot fly. Okay, it can fly. Okay, it can fly because it's a normal dragon, because even though it's a fire breathing dragon, object. Okay, it's a fire-breathing dragon object. It still can fly because it possesses what a dragon object has. Okay, now notice what happens if I say dragon one dot breathe fire. Notice that the breathe fire method is not even in the options that you get. Let's see what happens if we try to enforce and say it should breathe fire. You can see it pops up an error because the dragon does not contain a definition for breathe fire. Okay, even though that's what this whole class is about. Okay, I want to show you, even though the object that is stored inside dragon 1 is actually a fire breathing dragon, notice that because we stored it inside a dragon type, it takes the form of a dragon. So now it's behaving as if it is a dragon and not a fire breathing dragon. That's why you cannot call breathe fire. Remember, if for a dragon, it can't breathe fire, it can only fly. Okay, so that's it. Okay, that's the polymorphism aspect. Now let's do one more thing. Okay, let's create another variable. Let's say fire breathing dragon. So I'm creating a new variable and I'm declaring it as a fire breathing dragon type, and I'll call it dragon 2. Okay, and notice what I'm doing. Dragon 2 equals, I'm just going to take whatever object is stored inside this dragon 1, okay, and just shove it inside this dragon 2 variable. So I'm going to say dragon 1. Okay, okay, the reason why I can't just take whatever is in the dragon 1 and shove it inside dragon 2 is because they are of different types, and to do that I'll need to do what is called casting. Let me bring up notepad and write that. I'll need to cast it. So casting, okay, spelled casting. Okay, usually you perform casting when you're going to take an object of one type and store it into a variable of another type. Okay, usually, like, you could say, okay, why didn't we do it for this? The reason we didn't do it for this is because the fire breathing dragon object is a direct subclass of the dragon class. That's why you can just take it and shove it inside a dragon object. But you wouldn't be wrong by doing the casting here and saying something like dragon. It would still work. Okay, so this here, I'm actually casting. This is how you usually cast, even though these second brackets I just added are actually redundant, but I like to always include them just to show what is being casted. Okay, so what I mean is that even if I remove these two brackets, it still works. Okay, so this is how you do casting. So what I'm trying to say is that even without this trying to cast into a dragon, you can still store it into a dragon variable, because the fire breathing dragon object is a direct subclass or sub-object of the dragon object. Okay, so that's why you can do that. However, for the dragon, if notice what we're doing now, we're taking, you see this dragon 1 is a dragon object. Okay, it's a dragon object, even though of course we know a fire breathing dragon object is stored in there, but at the moment the dragon 1 is of dragon type and we want to take it and store it into a fire breathing dragon type. So to do that, we'll need to cast. Okay, we'll need to cast. So what we need to do is we need to put those brackets, use fire breathing dragon, okay, like this. And like I told you, I always like to add these brackets, even though they are redundant. I like to add them. So you can see that you are casting this, whatever object is stored inside here, you're casting it into a fire breathing dragon object. Okay, so this is possible. Now notice what happens. Remember, we only created this object once, the fire breathing dragon object, and we stored it inside dragon 1, and we saw that it behaves as if it is a dragon because it can only fly, it can't breathe fire. And then we take the same object again and we store it into this dragon2 variable, which is of type fire breathing dragon. And notice what is going to happen now. That same object is going to behave as if it is a fire breathing dragon. Notice if I say dot, notice we can actually breathe fire, okay, and also we can say dragon2 dot fly, okay. So notice that at this point, even though it's the same object, okay, remember what variables are. Variables are just like boxes where you can store things inside them. Usually we store objects inside them. We take this object that we created. It's actually a fire breathing dragon object that we created, but we store it inside a normal dragon variable. That's a variable that that is declared as a normal dragon type, okay. Now by doing that, we see that we cannot use the object as if it's a fire breathing dragon because like we stored it into this normal dragon object, okay. So it behaves at this point, the object behaves as if it is a normal dragon, okay. But then we take the same object again. Notice we take whatever is inside this variable and we store it into this dragon2 variable, okay. So we take the same object, however, like we saw, for us to be able to store it inside here, we had to cast, okay, we had to cast it into a fire breathing dragon. So we take that same object, put it inside this variable, and notice what happens. At this point, that same object is now behaving as if it's a fire breathing dragon, even though here it behaves. Okay, let me just add some comments here. So here at this point, the object behaves as if it is a normal dragon. That's not the spelling of normal dragon, okay. And then at this point we use the object, that same object. Remember, we didn't create any other object, it's the same object, we just changed the variable where it's being stored, okay. We take actually we're referencing, but we'll look at referencing later, okay. So we make this variable reference that same object, and at this point the object behave at this point the same object behaves as if it is a fire breathing dragon. Okay, so in essence you could say that here it takes the object takes the form of dragon, and at this point here the object takes the form of fire breathing dragon. Okay, so that's what polymorphism is all about. Okay, you would see that the same object can behave as if it is of one type, this, and then at some point in your program that same object behaves as if it is of another type. In this case, it behaves as if it is of fire breathing dragon. Okay, it's not just with subclasses that we have polymorphism. Okay, I'm just keeping your heads up. Okay, so you should keep at the back of your mind. You could also have polymorphism with interfaces. Okay, you remember when we treated the iFlyable interface, when we did the iFlyable interface. Okay, it's something similar. You could use an object as if it is an iFlyable object, and then at some point in your program, that same object could actually be the concrete. It could behave as if it is of the concrete type that it was created. Okay, you know, an interface cannot create objects. So usually if you say an object is of type this interface or is of type a particular interface, it means that object must have come from a particular class, remember, because it must have a concrete class, even though you're saying it's of that interface. Okay, I don't know if what I'm saying now makes any sense, but maybe in a future lesson we're going to see how using interfaces you can have polymorphism. Okay, so I'm going to end this class here. So this is what polymorphism is all about. I'll just stop that and see you in the next lesson.